Imagine a dark, smoke-filled room in 1930s New York. Corrupt cops are trading trade secrets for a sandwich. The mob is running the city, and a desperate woman is playing a deadly game of chess against the most powerful men in town. It feels like a classic, gritty detective noir. In fact, for long stretches of time, you completely forget you're actually watching a superhero show until the shadows start swinging. The brand new Spider-Noir series just dropped, and it completely blew me away by doing the impossible, making the hero's mask feel like a rare, earned reward rather than a cheap gimmick. Now, if you've been following the channel and caught my breakdowns on Batman or the recent Spider-Man essays, you know I love digging into how these characters adapt to different worlds. If you're new here, definitely hit that subscribe button and stick around because we are diving deep into the dark corners of comic book lore today. Now, I just finished the entire season and I'm already looking forward to what the show has to bring next. But before I give you the blueprint for a potential season 2 at the very end of this video, I want to hear from you. What comic storyline or villain do you think would make for an absolute killer second season? Let me know down below. For this breakdown, I want to take you on the exact journey I went through while watching. There are 3 major points I want to make today. First, we're looking at the raw instincts and predictions I wrote down at the halfway mark, including the things I called out perfectly, and a couple where I was totally wrong. From there, we're looking at the reality of the back half and how the show flipped the script on its own lore. Let's hit the pavement. To understand why this show works, you have to look at the world it builds in the first few episodes alone. This isn't the shiny, modern Marvel universe. This is 1930s noir, which means the morality and the ethics are entirely dictated by the era. Times are harder, people are more desperate, and the police aren't exempt from it. Take a look at a character like Janet. She literally goes down to the precinct and bribes a police officer for information with a sandwich. That small detail tells you everything you need to know about the environment Ben Reilly is operating in. It's gritty, compromised, and secrets are cheap if you are hungry enough. And in a world that cynical, you can't trust a single soul. Which brings us to Cat Hardy. Right from the jump, watching her back and forth with Ben, my detective instincts kind of kicked in. This character perfectly channels the classic comic book Black Cat energy, with a unique grounded twist. She's playing a high-stakes game of chess against every powerful man in the city. She's playing the mayor, she's playing Silvermane, and my gut check at episode 2 was that she was absolutely playing Ben too. But the writing does something brilliant here. It contributes heavily to the historical era. You can clearly see how sick and tired she is of being objectified and controlled by men like Silvermane. She's desperate to get out from under his thumb. So even if she does have genuine feelings for Ben or Flint Marko, she has to look out for number 1 because nobody else is going to do it for her. As the mystery started to unfold in the first few episodes, I started writing down my predictions. First up was Flint Marko. When he and Ben had that massive brawl on top of the skyscraper that was being constructed, Ben wasn't even wearing his mask. He gets thrown entirely off the building and he's free falling. You see him having this intense internal debate thinking, should I do it? Is it worth it? But when the dust settles, Flint takes that massive hard hit to the head, resulting in short-term memory loss. I wrote down in my notes, perfect. That memory wipe is a brilliant narrative write-off. It keeps the tension sky high, but cleanly protects Ben's secret identity since Flint forgets the whole face-to-face encounter. Then there was the rain scene. Later on, Flint was standing in a semi-light rain, seemingly unaffected. Now normally water messes with Sandman, so I paused it and think maybe it was just a minor visual miss on the show's part, or maybe the light rain just made his sand form more dense and solid. It definitely keeps me guessing, but my absolute favorite gut call happened when Robbie Robertson is tracking down leads. The second Lonnie Lincoln stepped on the screen, before the show even dropped his name, and way before his power started manifesting, I had this immediate feeling. I looked at him and I said, that's Tombstone. That's gotta be Lonnie Lincoln. Trusting my intuition on classic Spidey villains designs absolutely paid off. But as the first half of the season wraps up, we see Ben do something that instantly made us jaw drop as a Spider-Man fan. He corners Silvermane and straight up threatens his life. Now, if you know anything about standard Spider-Man, the absolute sanctity of life is his number 1 rule. He doesn't kill, and he doesn't threaten to. But like I said at the beginning, This show is keeping things locked into the 1930s noir reality. The ethics are different. Even though it stood out to me as a bit un-Spider-Man like, I kept an open mind, mostly because it fits the cynical world he's trapped in. Plus, it was just a threat. It doesn't mean he has to act on it, but it also shows you just how desperate Ben is getting to protect the people he cares about, like Janet and Robbie. That desperation leads right into the massive climax of episode 4. Ben is trying to play it cool, acting like he doesn't care if Cat leaves his apartment just so he can sneak out as the Spider. But Cat is smart. The moment on the street, they locked eyes while he was in costume, and she felt the connection. So what does she do? She tests him. She steps up to his windowsill, opens it up, and just leaps out in the open air. I literally paused the video right before that. There were only a few minutes left in the episode, and I had already told myself, she's risking her life because she is that confident that he's the Spider. And then when I hit play, it unfolded exactly like that. Ben Webster catching her early and pulling her back up for a massive cliffhanger kiss. And visual fans, look closely at how she falls. The framing, the way she drops, the trajectory of the web, it just feels like a direct visual homage to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man trying to save Gwen Stacy. Except this time, the noir universe gives us a win instead of a tragedy. Beautiful writing. Now, hitting play on the second half of the season completely changed the game. This is where my predictions met the show's reality, starting with episode 5 and Ben's official origin story. We've seen a dozen spider bites in live action, but this one leans heavily into horror. Ben wasn't bit by a radioactive lab experiment. He was bit by a mutated twitching man spider. I love how this choice affects his physical performance. The way Ben twitches and reacts to his environment shows that every spider person is affected differently by their mutation. It grounds his powers as a heavy, literal physical burden, which perfectly ties into the massive amount of survivor's guilt he brought home from the war. Now, before we look at how the back half wrapped up the mystery, I have to look at my scorecard. Going into episode 5, I had made a massive prediction that the POW camp in France was a front for the 1930s version of the super soldier serum. And I even guessed that comic legend Isaiah Bradley might be tied into it, at least by name. I'll admit it, Isaiah Bradley was a bit of a galaxy brain reach on my end. That's okay. And I was wrong about the specific tie-in, but the core of my prediction, dead on. The show confirms that Dr. Faber was actively experimenting on soldiers overseas, creating a massive conspiracy. But the show outsmarted me on one major detail. I originally predicted Ben changed his name to Ben Riley out of grief for Ruby's passing. Instead, the show flipped it. An old military buddy spots him, the guy Freckles, and he hints that the name change happened way back in France just to protect his identity from the government after the incident. I love being wrong when the writing is this good. It leaves a massive trail of ghosts from his past that they can explore later in the future. And as far as the name change, it still leaves it open, so they can explore that origin in a future season. Speaking of comic lore, the show pulls off another brilliant parallel with how it handles the villains. When Robbie Robertson is arguing with his editor about what the name of the new electric-powered threat should be, they start cycling through names without really settling on anything. It instantly reminded me of that classic scene in Spider-Man 2. You know, where J. Jonah Jameson and Ted Hoffman are brainstorming names before they can settle on Dr. Octopus. But the media in this era is deeply cynical. Instead of telling the tragic truth about these experimented on POWs who are just scared and seeking help, the editor twists the story to print headlines about monsters in the street, just to sell papers. It mirrors how Jameson always twisted Peter Parker's photos for profit, showing that even in the 1930s, the press could be just as ruthless as the mob. Then we get to the heartbreaking twist. Cat Hardy drops Ben's secret identity straight to Dr. Faber. At first, it looked like it was a cold-blooded betrayal for personal gain, but the reality is much more grounded. She isn't evil. She's fiercely, desperately loyal to Flint Marko, the man she actually truly loves. She's willing to sacrifice anything to save him. And honestly, I can't even be mad at her. It completely fits her complex character. This betrayal hits Ben hard, and he heads to a bar drinking his sorrows away. While he's there, some of the other patrons come in and start talking mad trash about the spider. Ben actually walks out, but then he thinks about it, puts the mask on, and walks right back inside. And look, it turns out that even drunk Spider-Man can absolutely throw hands. He clears the room without an issue, but he doesn't completely in silence. And that brought me back to a massive question. Who would be more terrifying? A Batman who laughs or a completely silent spider? For me, it's the silent spider every single time. A Batman who laughs is upfront about his insanity. You know death is coming. But when a version of Spider-Man whose entire identity is built on cocky quips and arrogant smart talk goes completely cold and silent, it means the playground rules are off. He's in a pitch black psychological headspace, and that is terrifying for any comic criminal. But back to Spider-Noir. The ultimate payoff of the back half belongs to Janet. Following his drunken antics, Ben finally decides to sit down and directly confess his identity to her. He looks her in the eye and tells her that he's the spider, only for Janet to reveal that she already knew. The show drops this brilliant montage of all these previous times that Ben had gotten completely wasted, stumbled around his office in his full spider costume, or parts of it, right in front of her, and then totally forgot about it the next morning because he was that out of it. Janet chose to play along, stay silent, and protect his conscience. She knew why he was wearing the mask, so she let him keep his secret identity to protect his peace of mind. It's a spectacular, funny, and deeply mature twist on the traditional identity reveal. As we push into the absolute chaos of the finale, the stakes get real. First, Ben realizes his organic web fluid is completely gone. I love this limitation. Spiders in nature actually do run out of silk under immense stress and trauma, and having Ben completely dry out right when he needs it the most adds an incredible layer of vulnerability. But it also forces the rest of the cast to step up, leading to one of the wildest, grittiest moments of the whole show. Ben tries to use Dr. Faber's antidote on Lonnie Lincoln. Now, Lonnie is Tombstone. His skin is completely impervious, so a standard needle should never pierce him. But Robbie Robertson swoops in and drives that needle straight into Lonnie's eye. It's a brutal, clever anatomy lesson. No matter how tough your skin is, the soft tissue of the eye is always vulnerable. It's wild, it's visceral, and it completely fits the Noir tone. That brings us to the final showdown with Megawatt, where the show hits us with an absolute staple of Spider-Man storytelling: the damaged half mask. Seeing half of Ben's real face exposed during a high-stakes battle always forces the audience to remember the vulnerable, tired man fighting underneath his powers. And just when things start to look bleak, Flint Marko makes a massive choice. Instead of choosing a path of pure villainy or trying to take down the spider, Sandman steps in to save the woman he loves, trying to shield Cat from Megawatt. It's a beautiful moment of tragic redemption that shows these POW test subjects aren't mindless monsters. They are victims of circumstance trying to survive. By the time the credits roll on the finale, the landscape of this universe has completely shifted. My absolute favorite thematic payoff is how the show wraps up the dynamic at the office. It doesn't just end with Ben Reilly back at his desk. The agency formally changes its name to Reilly and Ruiz. In an era where women are constantly objectified, controlled, and pushed into corners like Cat Hardy was under Silvermane, seeing Janet get her name directly on the door is a massive victory. It perfectly elevates her from a standard secretary to a full-blown partner who earned her stripes by protecting Ben's conscience when he was at his lowest. And that office door is wide open for greenlit season 2, because the finale leaves behind some massive, tantalizing breadcrumbs. First, there's Dr. Alethea Faber. Now, hardcore comic book nerds might recognize the last name from the mainstream comics, mad scientist Jacob Faber, but the show gives us a brilliant twist by making her an original, ruthless mother experimenting on soldiers to save her own son. Her experiments prove that there are still dozens of missing POWs out there with dormant or active mutations. And because the writers created entirely original characters for this season, like Ben's late fiancée Ruby Williams, who doesn't exist in the traditional comics, it means the sandbox for season 2 is completely unrestricted. If I were to pitch my absolute dream roster for next season, I'm looking straight at two specific villains, Hammerhead and Mr. Negative. Think about how flawless these two would be in a live action noir realm. Hammerhead is a classic mobster who is literally obsessed with the 1920s and 30s. Putting him in a real historical 1930s setting with his unbreakable flat steel skull and a Tommy gun gives Ben a grounded, terrifying physical mob threat to deal with. And then there's Mr. Negative. Visually, his powers create a stark, photographic, inverted black and white energy effect. In a show that is literally shot and celebrated for its atmospheric, high contrast black and white film style, casting Mr. Negative as a main antagonist would be an absolute visual masterpiece on screen. Whether they stick to the traditional comic origins or give them a fresh genetic POW twist like they did in this season, I have total confidence the writers would make it entertaining, fresh, and deeply engaging. At the end of the day, what makes this series an absolute triumph is that the 1930s detective plotting was so strong I occasionally forgot I was even watching a superhero show. It made the moments where the mask came on feel rare, earned, and incredibly rewarding. That's my breakdown on season 1 and what we have so far. If you haven't already, make sure you drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you want to see step into the shadows of season 2? If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and check out my previous video essays on Batman and the philosophy of the Spider-Man franchise right here on screen. I'm Peter, and I'll see you in the next case.